Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story. She slapped him once, then again, hard and breathless, her fury trembling through her fingertips, but he only smirked, stepped in, and captured her mouth in 2 searing kisses, pouring in every ounce of longing. His voice dropped, rough and possessive. "Tonight, you're mine." She slapped him twice. He kissed her twice on the lips. The city lights sparkled below them like fallen stars, casting their silhouettes against the marble columns. His touch burned through the thin fabric of her black dress, igniting every nerve ending as his fingers traced the curve of her spine. "You're impossible," Maya said, her eyes flashing with both anger and unmistakable attraction. The evening breeze played with her curls as she tried to maintain her composure despite her racing heart. Her dark skin seemed to glow in the moonlight, making her look ethereal, almost untouchable. "You think your money can buy anything, even me, that you can just post those photos and claim me like some trophy?" Ethan's piercing green eyes darkened as he traced his thumb along her cheekbone, his touch gentler than his commanding presence suggested. The contrast between his tenderness and intensity made her breath catch. "I don't want to buy you, Maya. I want to earn you. There's a difference." Maya stepped back, creating distance between them, though every fiber of her being screamed to close it again. The marble railing felt cool against her heated skin as she gripped it behind her. "You have a strange way of showing it, Ethan. Those pictures of us you shared without asking me, making everyone talk about us. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. My mother saw them, for heaven's sake." "I never meant to hurt you," he said, his arrogance momentarily giving way to vulnerability. The mask of the untouchable billionaire slipped, revealing the man beneath who seemed almost afraid. "I've never felt this way about anyone before. I don't always know how to handle it." "And that makes it okay?" she challenged, though she could feel her resolve weakening with each passing second. The chemistry between them was undeniable, electric, consuming, like standing in the path of a storm and welcoming the lightning. "You can't just bulldoze your way into my life because you're used to getting what you want." Ethan moved closer, and this time she didn't back away. The scent of his cologne, cedarwood, and something uniquely him enveloped her senses. "No," he admitted, his voice lower, more intimate. "It doesn't make it okay, but I'm asking for a chance to make things right, to show you who I really am beyond what the world sees." As his lips found hers again, Maya knew she was falling down. A dangerous rabbit hole. His kiss was both a question and a claim, soft yet demanding, offering both escape and capture in the same breath. Her fingers threaded through his hair, pulling him closer despite all the reasons she should push him away. A talented photographer from Brooklyn, meeting the world of a Manhattan billionaire. Worlds that were never supposed to collide, yet here they were, unable to stay apart, despite all the reasons they should. Her back pressed against the balcony wall as his kisses trailed down her neck, sending shivers across her skin despite the warm summer night. His hands cradled her face, as though she were something precious, something irreplaceable, not just another conquest. "I should hate you for what you did," she whispered against his lips, her voice betraying her own desire. "But you don't," he said, not a question, but a statement of fact. Maya pulled back just enough to meet his gaze, her eyes challenging despite the desire clouding them. "Don't be so sure. I haven't decided yet." A smile, genuine, not the practiced one he showed the world, curved his lips. "Then let me help you decide." His hand slid down her arm to intertwine his fingers with hers. The simple gesture somehow more intimate than his kisses. The vastness of the city spread out below them, a tapestry of lights and shadows, much like the complicated feelings weaving between them. Possibility hung in the air, dangerous and tempting. One month, she found herself saying, surprising even herself with the decision. 1 month to prove this isn't just some game to you, some novelty that you'll tire of when the challenge is gone. Ethan lifted their joined hands, pressing his lips to her knuckles in a gesture that felt almost like a vow. "I only need 1 night to prove it, but I'll take the month." The confidence in his voice should have annoyed her, but instead, it sent another wave of heat through her body. "Don't make me regret this," she warned, even as she allowed him to draw her back into his arms. When his mouth found the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder, she gasped, her body arching involuntarily against his. "Ethan," she breathed, her voice carrying both warning and invitation. He drew back slightly, his eyes searching hers, seeking permission rather than assuming it. Even in this moment of passion, he was careful with her boundaries, a consideration that touched her more deeply than she wanted to admit. "I want you," he said simply, the declaration hanging in the air between them, "but only if you want me too." The honesty in his voice, the vulnerability beneath the desire, crumbled the last of her resistance. "I do," she admitted, the words both surrender and claim. "God help me, I do." His answering smile was triumphant, yet tender, as he lifted her into his arms, as though she weighed nothing, carrying her from the balcony into the warmth of his bedroom. The opulence of the space registered only vaguely. Silk sheets, antique furniture, priceless art, all fading into irrelevance compared to the man now laying her gently on the bed. Ethan stood for a moment, just looking at her, his gaze so intense she could almost feel it like a physical caress. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "So damn beautiful it hurts to look at you sometimes." No one had ever looked at her this way, as though she were a masterpiece, something rare and precious, not just her body but all of her. Under his gaze, Maya felt herself blossoming, unfolding like a flower seeking sunlight after too long in shadow. When he joined her on the bed, their bodies coming together with a rightness that defied explanation, Maya stopped questioning why this man. Why now? Some connections transcended logic, defied categorization. What existed between them, this magnetic pull, this recognition that went beyond physical attraction, wasn't something that could be analyzed or explained away. It simply was. His mouth found hers again, more demanding now, and she matched his passion with her own. Their hands explored, discovered, claimed. Clothing fell away. Barriers dissolved, until there was nothing between them but heat and desire, and the promise of something neither had expected to find. Later, as they lay tangled together in the afterglow, Ethan's fingers drawing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder, Maya marveled at the twists of fate that had brought them to this moment. From confrontation to passion, from wariness to surrender, their path had been anything but straightforward. "What are you thinking?" he asked, his voice quiet in the darkened room. "That this is probably a mistake," she admitted, her honesty matching his earlier vulnerability. "But I'm not sorry." Ethan's arms tightened around her, pulling her closer against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat, strong and steady, beneath her cheek. "Not a mistake," he said firmly. "Complicated, challenging, unexpected, but not a mistake." Maya smiled against his skin, allowing herself to believe him, at least for tonight. Tomorrow would bring questions, complications, the reality of their different worlds colliding. But here, now, in the sanctuary they had created, none of that seemed to matter. As sleep began to claim her, Maya's last conscious thought was that whatever happened in the month ahead, whether Ethan proved himself worthy of her trust or not, this night had changed something fundamental within her. She had glimpsed possibilities she'd never allowed herself to imagine, connections she'd never expected to find, and perhaps that alone made the risk worthwhile. Chapter 2. First meeting 6 months earlier, Maya, aged 28, was taking photos of the city at sunrise. Her first gallery show was opening soon, and she needed one final perfect shot to complete her collection. The early morning light bathed the city in hues of gold and pink, transforming concrete and steel into something almost magical. The rooftop of this midtown high-rise offered the perfect vantage point. She had discovered it a week ago and returned every morning since, chasing the perfect light. Today, finally, the conditions were perfect. Thin clouds diffusing the morning light, creating dramatic shadows across the urban landscape. "Excuse me, but this is private property," a deep voice called from behind her, shattering her concentration. Maya turned, ready to argue her case, only to find herself momentarily speechless. A tall man in an impeccably tailored suit stood watching her, his presence commanding attention without effort. Broad shoulders, strong jawline, and eyes so intensely green they seemed almost unreal against his tanned skin. Recovering her composure, she pointed to the small sign by the rooftop entrance. "The sign says, 'This roof is open to the public until 9:00 a.m., she replied, standing her ground. "I checked before coming up. I still have 30 minutes. The man stepped closer, his movement fluid and confident. "I own the building," he said simply. "I can change the rules." Despite his commanding presence, Maya refused to be intimidated. She'd worked too hard to get where she was, fighting against every expectation and barrier placed before her. One privileged man wasn't going to derail her now. "Well, unless you've posted new signs since yesterday, "The current rules say I have 30 more minutes," she said, turning back to her camera. She deliberately refocused her lens, acutely aware of his gaze, but refusing to acknowledge it. "I need just 5 more minutes. The light is perfect right now, and it won't last." Instead of the anger or dismissal she expected, she heard him move closer, his footsteps quiet on the concrete. "What are you photographing?" he asked, curiosity replacing the authority in his voice. Maya hesitated, then decided honesty might be her best ally. "The contrast between shadows and light," she answered, not looking away from her viewfinder as she adjusted her settings. "How the same city looks completely different, depending on who's seeing it and when. Most people only see New York in one light, their own. I want to show them what they're missing." She took several shots in quick succession, capturing the way the sunlight glinted off windows in the distance, while shadows still clung to the streets below. The city existed in 2 states simultaneously, night and day, shadow and light. When she finally lowered her camera and turned, she found him watching her with unexpected intensity, something almost like respect in his expression. "I'm Ethan," he said simply, extending his hand. He deliberately left out his last name and any mention of his wealth or position. "Maya," she replied, taking his hand briefly. His grip was warm and firm, sending an unexpected tingle up her arm. When their eyes met directly for the first time, something electric passed between them, a recognition of something kindred despite their obvious differences. "You speak about the city like it's a living thing," he observed, moving to stand beside her at the edge of the rooftop. "Most people just see buildings and streets." Maya smiled slightly, surprised by his perception. "It is living. It breathes. It has moods. It tells stories if you know how to listen. That's what I try to capture." Ethan nodded, his gaze sweeping across the skyline, as though seeing it anew through her words. "I've spent my life in this city, but I've never thought of it quite that way." The admission intrigued her. There was something almost wistful in his tone, as though he envied her perspective. For the first time, she really looked at him, not just registering his expensive suit and commanding presence, but seeing the man beneath. "Would you like to see?" she found herself offering, holding out her camera before she could think better of it. His surprise was evident as he carefully took the camera, treating the expensive equipment with appropriate respect. As he looked through the viewfinder at the image she'd framed, his expression shifted subtly. "You see beauty where most would see nothing special," he said quietly, handing the camera back. "That's a rare gift." Something in his genuine appreciation made Maya soften slightly. It's not about seeing beauty as much as seeing truth. Sometimes they're the same thing, sometimes not. Ethan checked his watch platinum, she noticed, but understated, rather than flashy. "Your 30 minutes aren't up yet, but I have a meeting. Enjoy the rest of your time here." He hesitated, then added, "The roof is actually open until 10:00, not 9. The sign is wrong." As he turned to leave, Maya felt a strange reluctance to see him go. "Thank you," she called after him, surprised by her own sincerity. He glanced back with a smile that transformed his serious face into something unexpectedly charming. "For what? I didn't do anything." "For seeing," she replied simply. Something passed between them in that moment, an understanding, a connection that defied explanation. Neither could have predicted how that brief rooftop encounter would alter the course of both their lives, setting them on a collision course that would challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves and each other. The next morning, Maya returned to the rooftop, telling herself it was just for the light, just for that perfect shot. But as she set up her equipment, she found herself glancing toward the door more often than she would admit. When it remained closed, she felt a disappointment she refused to acknowledge. She was adjusting her aperture when she heard it, the soft click of the door opening. Her heart jumped in a way that annoyed her. She didn't look up, pretending complete absorption in her work. "The light's different today." His voice came from behind her, closer than she expected. He'd moved quietly for such a large man. "It's always different," she replied, still not looking at him. "That's what makes it worth capturing." Ethan moved to stand beside her, a respectful distance away. In his hand, he held 2 cups of coffee. "I wasn't sure how you take it," he said, offering her one. "I got you black with sugar packets on the side." The gesture surprised her. She finally turned to face him, noticing he'd dressed more casually today. Still expensive clothes, but less formal. Jeans that probably cost more than her rent. A simple button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. The transformation was striking. "Thank you," she said, accepting the coffee and adding a single packet of sugar. She stirred it with the wooden stick he offered, wondering what had brought him back, what he wanted from her. As though reading her thoughts, Ethan said, "I'm not usually up at this hour, but I couldn't stop thinking about what you said yesterday about the city being alive." He gestured toward the skyline. "I wanted to see it through your eyes, just once." The admission held a vulnerability that caught her off guard. Powerful men rarely admitted to seeing value in others' perspectives. "It's not something you can see in one morning," she found herself saying. "Then I'll come back tomorrow," he replied simply, as though it were the most natural conclusion in the world. And he did. Each morning for the next week, Ethan appeared on the rooftop, just as Maya was setting up her equipment. Sometimes he brought coffee, sometimes pastries from a bakery she could never afford. They fell into an easy routine, watching the sunrise together in comfortable silence, broken only by occasional conversation. By the third day, Maya had learned that Ethan owned not just the building they stood on, but several others visible from their vantage point. By the fifth, she knew he'd lost both parents young and built his empire from their modest inheritance. By the seventh, she told him about her mother's sacrifices to buy her first camera, about the rejection letters from galleries that had almost made her quit. Their conversations never felt like the polite exchanges of strangers or the calculated networking of New York professionals. There was an honesty between them that defied expectation, as though the early hour and shared sunrises created a space where usual social barriers dissolved. "Why photography?" he asked her on the 10th morning, as she showed him how to adjust her camera's focus manually. The question made her pause. Most people asked about her subject matter or technique, not the why behind her chosen medium, because a camera tells the truth, even when people don't want to see it, she said finally. "It captures what is, not what we pretend to be." Ethan considered this, his green eyes thoughtful. "And you? Are you capturing your truth through these images?" "I'm trying," she admitted. "Some days I get closer than others." Their hands brushed as he returned her camera, the brief contact sending a current of awareness through her that she tried to ignore. Whatever was developing between them, this unexpected friendship or connection, complicated her neat categories of the world. He belonged to a class of people she'd always viewed with suspicion. Yet here he was, showing genuine interest in her perspective, learning her craft with the same concentration he likely applied to million-dollar deals. On the morning of her gallery opening, Ethan arrived with a small box wrapped in simple brown paper. "For tonight," he said, offering it without ceremony. Inside was a vintage camera lens she'd mentioned wanting, but could never afford. The thoughtfulness of the gift that he'd remembered such a detail from a casual conversation touched her deeply. "I can't accept this," she said, even as her fingers caressed the precious glass reverently. "It's too much." "It's not charity," Ethan said, reading her hesitation correctly. "It's recognition of your talent. Use it to capture tonight's memories." Still, she hesitated. Accepting such an expensive gift felt like crossing a line she wasn't sure she wanted to cross. But the lens was perfect, exactly what she needed for the intimate portraits she hoped to take at the gallery. "Come tonight," she heard herself saying, "to the opening. See what I've been working on all these mornings." His smile lit something warm within her chest. "I wouldn't miss it for anything." That evening, surrounded by art critics and potential buyers, Maya found her attention repeatedly drawn to the tall figure moving methodically through her exhibited photographs. Ethan studied each image with the same concentration he'd shown on the rooftop, taking his time, absorbing details others missed. When he finally approached her, there was a new appreciation in his eyes. "These are extraordinary," he said simply. "You've made me see my own city, as though for the first time." The compliment, free of the usual platitudes gallery-goers offered, made her cheeks warm. "Thank you. How did you know I owned the building?" he asked suddenly, his expression curious rather than defensive. Maya smiled. "Google exists, Ethan Carter. Billionaire real estate developer wasn't hard to figure out once I had your first name." His face fell slightly, vulnerability flickering across his features. "Does that change things?" The question surprised her. She'd expected arrogance or amusement at her discovery, not this uncertainty. "Should it?" "It usually does," he admitted quietly. In that moment, Maya realized he'd been enjoying their rooftop conversations, partly because she hadn't known who he was, or at least had pretended not to. She treated him as just Ethan, not as Ethan Carter, billionaire developer whose name appeared regularly in the business section of the Times. "I'm not usual," she replied, making him smile again. As the gallery emptied, Ethan remained, examining a photograph she'd taken on their first morning together. Without looking away from the image, he said, "Have dinner with me tomorrow." The request hung between them, transforming their casual rooftop acquaintance into something more deliberate. Maya considered all the reasons to refuse: the vastly different worlds they inhabited, the complications such a relationship would inevitably bring, the warning voices of friends who would see only a wealthy white man slumming it with a black artist from Brooklyn. Yet something in his eyes when he finally turned to face her, a mixture of hope and the expectation of rejection, made her nod. "One dinner," she clarified, "somewhere normal, not one of those places where everyone kisses your ring and I feel like an anthropological curiosity." Relief and pleasure transformed his face. "I know just the place." As they exchanged phone numbers, their fingers brushed, that now familiar current passing between them. Whatever path they were starting down together, Maya suspected it would be unlike anything either of them had experienced before. A collision of worlds as different as night and day, yet perhaps capable of creating something beautiful in the spaces where they overlapped. Chapter 3. Unexpected attraction. For 3 weeks, following their rooftop encounter, Ethan, aged 35, found increasingly transparent excuses to visit at dawn. The first morning, he claimed he needed to check on building maintenance. The second, he brought architectural plans he pretended to review. By the third visit, he arrived with 2 cups of coffee and no pretense at all. "Black with 1 sugar, right?" he asked, offering her the cup. Maya raised an eyebrow, accepting the coffee. "How did you know?" "I notice things," Ethan said with a shrug, leaning against the railing beside her. "Like how you squint slightly when you're concentrating on a shot, or how you always check your watch exactly 17 minutes after arriving." "That's either impressively observant or slightly creepy," she replied, though the smile playing at her lips took the sting from her words. "I prefer attentive," he countered. Against her better judgment, Maya found herself enjoying his company. Unlike most people in her life, Ethan asked questions about her photography that went beyond polite interest. He seemed genuinely fascinated by her perspective, often challenging her to explain why she chose certain angles or lighting conditions. On the morning of her gallery opening, he arrived with a small box containing a vintage camera lens. "For tonight," he explained as she examined it with reverent fingers. "I thought you might want to capture your own success." Maya looked up, surprised. "How did you know about my opening?" "I noticed things," he repeated, his eyes never leaving hers. The intensity of his gaze made her heart quicken in a way that had nothing to do with coffee or the morning chill. For the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge the attraction that had been building between them, an attraction she'd been steadfastly ignoring. "Come to my gallery opening tonight," she found herself saying, the words escaping before she could reconsider. 8O Hoffman Gallery in Chelsea. His eyes brightened. "I'll be there." True to his word, Ethan arrived precisely at 8, having clearly come directly from his office. His presence caused a subtle ripple through the gallery, whispers and glances that didn't escape Maya's notice as she greeted other guests. She watched from across the room as he moved deliberately from one photograph to the next, spending time with each image rather than making the cursory circuit many attendees did. Her collection showcased the overlooked beauty of ordinary city life: laundry fluttering between tenement buildings, children playing in the spray of an open fire hydrant, an elderly couple dancing to a street musician's melody, shadows creating geometric patterns across urban landscapes. Each image told a story of the city, beyond its skyline and tourist attractions. When she finally made her way to him, he was standing before her centerpiece, the dawn shot she'd taken the morning they met, the city caught between night and day. "These are extraordinary," he told her, his voice carrying a sincerity that warmed her more than the champagne in her hand. You've captured something most people walk past every day without seeing." "Thank you," she smiled, genuinely touched by his appreciation, "though I doubt they compare to the art in your mansion." His head turned sharply. "How did you Google exists, Ethan Carter?" Maya laughed, enjoying his momentary discomposure. "Billionaire real estate developer wasn't hard to figure out once I had your first name and knew you owned the building. Your company website has quite the impressive bio." His face fell slightly, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. "Does that change things?" The question carried more weight than its simple words suggested. Maya studied him, seeing past the expensive suit to the man who had brought her coffee and talked about architecture and light for 3 weeks. without once mentioning his wealth or status. "Should it?" she countered softly. "It usually does," he admitted, and she glimpsed the weariness behind his confident exterior, the expectation of being valued for his wealth rather than himself. "I'm not usual," she replied, making him smile again. Hours later, as the gallery emptied of guests, she found him still there, now examining a smaller photograph in the corner, one of a solitary figure watching the sunset from a rooftop, the city spread out beneath him. "Have dinner with me," he said abruptly, turning to face her directly. "Not as Ethan Carter, billionaire developer, but just as Ethan, the guy who's been bringing you coffee for 3 weeks. Maya hesitated, acutely aware of the gallery staff watching them curiously. Her rational mind listed all the reasons to decline. They came from completely different worlds. He was clearly used to getting what he wanted. Relationships that crossed such significant social and economic divides rarely worked. Yet something in his eyes, a genuine hope mixed with the expectation of rejection, made her nod. "Dinner," she agreed cautiously. "But somewhere normal, not some exclusive place where they kiss up to you. And I feel out of place." Relief and pleasure transformed his face. "I know just the spot. Tomorrow at 7. As she agreed, Maya couldn't silence the warning voice in her head, reminding her that fairy tales rarely featured black photographers from Brooklyn and white billionaires finding happily ever after. Yet looking at him, at the way he viewed her work with genuine appreciation, and saw her as more than just her appearance or background, she found herself willing to at least explore whatever this connection between them might be. "One dinner," she clarified, though her smile softened the limitation. "One is all I need," he replied, with that confident smile that both irritated and attracted her. As they exchanged phone numbers, their fingers brushed, sending that now familiar jolt of awareness through her. Whatever was developing between them defied easy categorization or prediction. They stood at the intersection of two very different worlds, with all the complications that entailed. Yet in that moment, as the gallery lights dimmed around them, those differences seemed less important than the unexpected understanding that had blossomed on a rooftop at dawn. The following evening, Maya spent more time than she cared to admit choosing her outfit. She wanted to look nice without appearing to have tried too hard. After several changes, she settled on a deep teal wrap dress that complemented her skin tone, paired with her favorite handcrafted gold earrings. Elegant without being overly formal, unique without being deliberately avant-garde. At precisely 7, her buzzer rang. Ethan stood outside her Brooklyn apartment building, looking both out of place and perfectly at ease, a contradiction that seemed to define him. He dressed down for the occasion, trading his usual bespoke suits for dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt that still probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. "You look beautiful," he said simply, his appreciation evident in his gaze. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she replied, feeling suddenly shy despite their weeks of dawn conversations. Something about seeing him here, in her neighborhood, in this context, made everything more real. "Shall we?" he asked, gesturing toward a sleek but understated car parked nearby. As they drove, Maya waited for him to reveal their destination, curious despite herself. When he turned off the busy Manhattan streets and headed toward the outskirts of the city, her curiosity overcame her. "Should I be worried you're taking me somewhere to quietly dispose of my body?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. Ethan laughed, the sound genuine and unrestrained. "If I were planning that, I definitely wouldn't have worn this," he said, gesturing to his outfit. "Bloodstains are impossible to remove." The casual joke, so at odds with his public image of polished professionalism, delighted her. This was the Ethan she'd come to know on the rooftop. Thoughtful, surprisingly funny, more complex than his wealth might suggest. As he drove, they talked easily, the conversation flowing as naturally as it had during their sunrise meetings. Maya found herself relaxing, the tension she'd felt about this dinner date, because she could no longer pretend it wasn't a date gradually dissolving. Whatever was happening between them felt both extraordinary and somehow inevitable, like forces greater than either of them had set this path in motion that morning on the rooftop. When Ethan finally turned onto a narrow private road that wound through a wooded area, Maya's curiosity reached its peak. The last thing she had expected was to be brought to what appeared to be a modest but elegant stone house, surrounded by carefully maintained gardens, illuminated by soft landscape lighting. "What is this place?" she asked, as he helped her from the car, his hand warm against hers. Ethan's expression softened, a vulnerability she rarely saw crossing his features. "This was my mother's garden," he said quietly. "It's the only place I feel real." Chapter 4. Following their first real date was nothing like Maya expected. She had prepared herself for an upscale restaurant, despite her stipulation, certain that Ethan's definition of normal would still involve Michelin stars and waiters who spoke in hushed tones. She'd spent an hour choosing an outfit that wouldn't look out of place in such a setting, while still feeling true to herself, a deep teal wrap dress that complemented her skin tone, paired with her favorite hand-crafted gold earrings. When Ethan picked her up in a sleek but understated car, driving himself rather than employing a chauffeur, she was already surprised. But when he turned off the busy Manhattan streets and headed toward the outskirts of the city, her curiosity overcame her. "Should I be worried you're taking me somewhere to quietly dispose of my body?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. Ethan laughed, the sound genuine and unrestrained. "If I were planning that, I definitely wouldn't have worn this," he said, gesturing to his outfit, dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt instead of his usual tailored suits. Bloodstains are impossible to remove. After another 15 minutes, he turned onto a narrow private road that wound through a wooded area, eventually opening to reveal a modest but elegant stone house, surrounded by gardens, not at all what she had expected from a man whose name was synonymous with gleaming skyscrapers. "My mother planted this garden before she died," he explained, as he led her through what appeared to be a carefully maintained but not overly manicured green space. Soft landscape, lighting illuminated stone paths winding between flowering shrubs and mature trees. "It's the only place I feel real." Maya touched his hand gently, surprised by the unexpected glimpse into his personal history. "Thank you for showing me." At the center of the garden stood a simple wooden table set for dinner, illuminated by strings of small lights hung from the branches above. A bottle of wine breathed beside covered plates, the setup elegant yet understated. "You cooked?" she asked skeptically as he pulled out her chair. "God, no," he laughed, the sound relaxed and genuine. "I'd burn water. But I did convince my mother's old housekeeper to prepare her recipes. No staff, no waiters, no pretense, just us." As they ate, surrounded by the garden's quiet beauty, Ethan told her about losing his parents young, his father to a heart attack, his mother to cancer shortly after, how he'd built his life from the emptiness their absence left, driven by a determination to never feel as helpless as he had watching his mother's illness progress. "Nothing mattered in the end," he said, swirling the wine in his glass, his eyes reflecting the soft lights above them. "I could have all the money in the world, but I couldn't buy more time with her." The vulnerability in his admission touched something in Maya. Instead of the privileged air she'd assumed, she glimpsed a man who had experienced profound loss, whose achievements provided a shield against feeling that powerlessness again. She shared her own journey, growing up in a neighborhood where ambitions were often constrained by circumstance, where her artistic aspirations were met with practical concerns about stability. How her mother had worked double shifts as a nurse to help pay for her first professional camera, believing in her talent even when gallery doors remained closed. "She sounds remarkable," Ethan said, genuine admiration in his voice. "She is," Maya agreed, surprised by how easy it felt to share these parts of herself with him. "She taught me that seeing beauty is a choice, not a circumstance, that you can find it even in difficult places if you're willing to look." Ethan's eyes held hers across the table. "Is that why your photography focuses on overlooked moments? You're showing others what you've learned to see." The perceptiveness of his question caught her off guard. "I've never thought of it that way," she admitted. "But yes, I suppose that's exactly what I'm doing." As the evening progressed, their conversation flowed with surprising ease, moving from personal histories to shared interests, discovering unexpected common ground despite their different backgrounds. Ethan's knowledge of architecture complemented her eye for composition. Her understanding of light balanced his fascination with structure. They debated favorite films and books, finding their tastes overlapped in unexpected ways. After dessert, Ethan suggested they take a walk through the rest of the garden, now illuminated by moonlight and the subtle glow of landscape lighting. As they strolled side by side, their hands brushed accidentally, then deliberately, until his fingers intertwined with hers in a gesture that felt both tentative and significant. "I don't usually do this," Maya admitted, looking down at their joined hands. "Hold hands?" Ethan asked with a teasing smile. "Let my guard down." she clarified, meeting his gaze directly. "Especially with someone so different from me." Ethan stopped walking, turning to face her fully. The moonlight cast half his face in shadow, but his eyes remained intensely green even in the darkness. "We're not so different where it matters," he said softly. "We both know what it's like to fight for something, to want to create something lasting." His perception struck a chord within her. Despite all their obvious differences, race, wealth, background, there was a kindred quality to their ambitions, their desire to leave a mark on the world. "I'm still not sure this makes sense," she said, though she didn't pull her hand away. "Us. Most worthwhile things don't make sense at first," he replied, reaching up to brush a strand of hair from her face, his touch reverent. "They just feel right." His gaze dropped to her lips for a fraction of a second. A question, not a demand. The tension between them had been building all evening. Layers of conversation and shared vulnerabilities created a connection that transcended their differences. When he leaned in slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, Maya found herself meeting him halfway. Their first kiss was gentle, exploratory, a meeting of equals, despite all the ways society would view them as anything but. His hand cradled her face with a tenderness that made her heart ache, while hers rested against his chest, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. When they parted, both slightly breathless, the look in his eyes made her feel seen in a way few people had ever managed. "I should get you home," he said reluctantly, his forehead resting against hers, "before I forget all my good intentions." The drive back to her apartment was filled with a new awareness, a shift in their dynamic that made even silence feel intimate. His hand found hers across the console, thumb tracing patterns against her skin that sent currents of electricity up her arm. At her door, he kissed her again, deeper this time, with a restrained passion that promised more but demanded nothing. "When can I see you again?" he asked, his voice husky. "Tomorrow," she found herself saying, surprising them both with her eagerness. "I have a shoot in Central Park in the afternoon. I'll pick you up after," he promised, kissing her once more before reluctantly stepping back. "Good night, Maya." "Good night, Ethan," she replied, watching him walk away before closing her door with a sigh that was part disbelief, part exhilaration. That night, she dreamed of gardens and skylines merging, of worlds colliding, not in conflict, but in harmony. And somewhere in those dreams, a man with green eyes held her hand, leading her towards something that defied expectation, but felt inexplicably right. The following weeks passed, in a whirlwind of discovery, both of each other and the unexpected space their relationship was creating between their different worlds. Ethan joined her for sunrise shoots, learning to hold reflectors and appreciate the technical aspects of her art. Maya found herself in penthouse boardrooms, observing the precision with which he navigated business negotiations, the respect his employees showed him not from fear, but genuine admiration. They created traditions of their own, Sunday mornings in his mother's garden, Wednesday night takeout in her small apartment, where Ethan seemed more relaxed than in any of his luxury properties. Little by little, they carved out a shared reality that existed somewhere between their separate lives. 1 month into their relationship, Ethan surprised her with a weekend trip to a small coastal town where no one knew his name or net worth. In a rented cottage overlooking the ocean, they made love for the first time, a joining that felt like both discovery and homecoming. Afterward, as they lay tangled together, watching moonlight play across the waves, Maya realized with startling clarity that she was falling in love with him. The thought should have terrified her. Everything she knew about the world, about power dynamics and racial realities, about relationships that crossed such significant divides, told her this couldn't work long term. Yet in his arms, those concerns seemed distant, theoretical problems for a future that felt less important than the present moment. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Maya considered deflecting, but chose honesty instead. "That I should be more afraid of this, of us, than I am." His arms tightened around her, his lips pressing against her hair. "Maybe that's because, despite everything that should make this complicated, we just fit." The simple assessment resonated with her own feelings. They did fit, in ways that defied logical explanation. Their differences, rather than creating barriers, seemed to complement each other, filling gaps neither had recognized in themselves until now. Back in New York, their relationship deepened, despite occasional reminders of the worlds they straddled. Ethan's business associates raised eyebrows when he brought Maya to corporate events. Her artist friends made pointed comments about selling out when she attended galas on his arm. Yet these external pressures somehow strengthened their connection rather than weakening it, creating a sense of us against the world that bound them more tightly together. 3 months after their first kiss in the garden, Ethan gave Maya a key to his penthouse. 2 weeks later, she cleared a drawer for his things in her apartment. Neither made a big production of these steps. They simply felt natural, inevitable progressions of a relationship that was becoming the center of both their lives. The morning Maya realized she'd spent more nights at Ethan's place than her own in the past month, she brought up the question that had been hovering unspoken between them. "What are we doing, Ethan?" she asked as they stood on his balcony, watching the city wake below them. "Where is this going?" Ethan turned to her, his expression serious yet tender. "Wherever we want it to go," he said simply. "I'm not putting a timeline or expectations on this. I just know I want you in my life in whatever way makes you happy." The answer, free of pressure or demand, reassured her more than passionate declarations might have. This was what had drawn her to him from the beginning, his ability to see her clearly, to respect her autonomy, while still making his own desires known. "I want that too," she admitted, leaning into him as his arms encircled her from behind. Chapter 5. Complications. For 2 months, Ethan and Maya existed in a bubble of their own making. Their worlds merged in unexpected ways. Breakfast at dawn on his rooftop, afternoons in her favorite hidden corners of the city, evenings alternating between his world of exclusive restaurants and her world of vibrant neighborhood eateries. He attended her gallery showings, standing quietly in the background, his pride evident in his eyes. She accompanied him to a few carefully selected events, where his hand rarely left the small of her back, a silent declaration of her importance to him. But bubbles, by their nature, are fragile things, easily punctured by the sharp edges of reality. The first complication arose at a charity gala, one of those glittering affairs where Manhattan's elite gathered to feel virtuous while drinking champagne that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. Maya had agreed reluctantly, knowing these events were part of his world, but feeling perpetually out of place among people who viewed her as an exotic curiosity at best, an interloper at worst. "You look incredible," Ethan said as she emerged in a floor-length sapphire gown. The dress was more extravagant than anything she'd ever owned, the silk cool against her skin. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up," she admitted, adjusting the emerald earrings he'd insisted on lending her. "These probably cost more than my entire apartment." Ethan crossed to stand behind her, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "You outshine them," he said simply. "The emeralds, the dress, they're just accessories to you, not the other way around." The trouble began almost immediately upon their arrival. Ethan was engaged by acquaintances, leaving Maya momentarily alone when an elegantly dressed older woman approached. "So, you're Ethan's new friend?" the woman said, her smile not reaching her eyes as she assessed Maya from head to toe. "How refreshing." "I'm Maya Thompson," she replied evenly, extending her hand. "And you are?" "Eleanor Prescott. My husband sits on the board with Ethan," she said, taking Maya's hand briefly, her grip limp and dismissive. "Tell me, how exactly did you two meet?" Ethan usually moves in rather selective circles. The implication was clear. Before she could respond, another woman joined them, equally elegant, equally assessing. "You're the photographer, aren't you?" the newcomer asked, not bothering with introductions. "Ethan mentioned your work focuses on what was it? Urban poverty?" "Social documentary," Maya corrected, maintaining her composure. "My current collection examines overlooked beauty in everyday urban landscapes." "How fascinating," Eleanor said, in a tone suggesting it was anything but. "It must be quite an adjustment, moving in these circles. Ethan's previous girlfriends have been more accustomed to this world." The conversation continued, questions framed as innocent interest while carrying barbed implications. Where had she studied? Had she always lived in that part of Brooklyn? Each question layered with subtle reminders that she was an outsider. When Ethan finally returned to her side, the women's demeanor shifted instantly to warm smiles and social niceties. Their performance was flawless, but the message had been delivered. She didn't belong here. "Everything okay?" Ethan murmured as they moved away. "Fine," Maya replied automatically, unwilling to appear wounded by such predictable snobbery. But the encounter had left its mark, reinforcing all her doubts about their relationship's viability. The second test came at a neighborhood barbecue in Brooklyn. hosted by Maya's childhood friend, Aisha. This time the tables were turned. Ethan arrived in casual clothes, making a visible effort to fit in, but his expensive watch and the unconscious authority in his posture marked him clearly. "So, you're the white boy who's got our girl all twisted up," Aisha's husband, Jamal, said bluntly, handing Ethan a beer while eyeing him with suspicion. "Got to say, you're not what I pictured when Maya said she was seeing someone." To his credit, Ethan didn't flinch. "I'm guessing white billionaire wasn't on anyone's bingo card for Maya," he replied, with self-deprecating humor. "If it helps, she wasn't what I expected either. She's better." Maya's friends, protective of her after years of shared struggles, viewed Ethan with varying degrees of suspicion. Unlike the subtle barbs of Manhattan society, their concerns were expressed directly. Questions about his intentions, warnings about toying with Maya's feelings, pointed comments about cultural differences. "They're just protective," Maya explained later as they walked back to his car. "They've seen too many people get hurt." "I understand," Ethan said, though his expression remained troubled. "But their assumption that I'm going to hurt you because of who I am, that's its own kind of prejudice." The observation hung between them, uncomfortably accurate. Both had encountered prejudgment from the other's social circle, assumptions based on race, class, and background, rather than individual character. These encounters accumulated, creating fractures in their relationship's foundation. The breaking point came after a gallery opening, where one of Ethan's friends had made a series of tone-deaf comments about how articulate Maya was, microaggressions thinly veiled as compliments. "This isn't working," Maya finally said in his car. "We're kidding ourselves, Ethan. These worlds don't mix oil and water." "That's not fair," he protested, his knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. "We've been making it work for months. Have we?" she challenged. "Or have we just been avoiding the reality? Your friends see me as some exotic experiment. My friends think you're slumming it." "Neither side believes this is real. Since when do we care what other people think?" Ethan pulled the car over. "This is about us, not them." Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Because I'm rich and white, and you're, because you live in a bubble, Ethan." The words burst from her. "You don't understand my life, and you don't try to. You think throwing money at problems solves them." The accusation struck him like a physical blow. "That's not fair." There, on every platform, were photos of her and Ethan together, private moments from their relationship. Ethan feeding her ice cream, Maya asleep on his shoulder, the two of them dancing at midnight on his rooftop. Beneath these images, a caption from Ethan's official account: "Sometimes the most unexpected love is the most undeniable. Couldn't imagine my life without this extraordinary woman." For days after their balcony encounter, Maya avoided Ethan's calls and messages. She needed space to think, to decide whether what they shared was worth fighting for. Despite the complications, the passion between them had never been in question. Their bodies spoke a language of perfect understanding, even when their minds clashed. But was that enough? In her small apartment, surrounded by her photography and the life she'd built independently, Maya confronted the reality of her feelings. At night, on the fourth day of silence, her doorbell rang. Expecting it to be Ethan, she steeled herself for a confrontation. Instead, she found a delivery person holding a large portfolio case. Inside was not jewelry or expensive gifts, as she might have expected, but something far more meaningful: prints of her own photographs, the ones that had been hanging in his penthouse, carefully packaged and returned. Beneath them was a handwritten note: "These are yours, your vision, your art, your perspective that changed how I see the world. I was wrong to share our private moments without your permission. Wrong to think I could fix our problems with grand gestures instead of real understanding. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet. Just the chance to do better." Ethan. The gesture, so contrary to the public declaration that had angered her, touched something deep within Maya. This was the Ethan she had fallen in love with. Thoughtful, capable of growth, seeing her needs, even when they differed from his instincts. That evening, she arrived at his penthouse unannounced. When he opened the door, the naked hope and relief on his face, before he could mask it with composure, told her everything about the days they'd spent apart. "Most people don't unless they live it. That's why representation matters so much in my work, showing people as they are, not as others expect them to be." In turn, Maya began to see beyond Ethan's wealth to the man who had built himself from emotional poverty after his difficult childhood. His drive wasn't simply ambition, but a desperate attempt to create security after experiencing profound loss. His wealth wasn't just privilege, it was armor against ever feeling powerless again. One rainy evening, they found themselves trapped in her apartment during a thunderstorm that knocked out power across several blocks. By candlelight, they built a fort of blankets like children, creating an intimate space where the outside world couldn't intrude. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," Maya whispered, her face illuminated by the soft glow of candlelight, creating shadows that danced across her features. Ethan was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. "I'm terrified of ending up alone," he finally admitted. "All this success, all these buildings with my name on them, sometimes I think they're just elaborate distractions from the fact that before you, no one really saw me, just what I could do for them." The vulnerability in his confession touched her deeply. This powerful man, who commanded boardrooms and shaped skylines, harbored the same fundamental human fear as everyone, the fear of never being truly known. "I've never let anyone see me the way you do," Ethan admitted, tracing his fingers along her cheek. His touch was reverent, as though she was something precious he couldn't quite believe was real. Not the real me. Beneath all the expectations and assumptions, "I've never wanted to be seen by anyone the way I want to be seen by you," Maya whispered back, the words emerging from a place deeper than conscious thought. That night, they surrendered completely to each other, their passion finally unhindered by pride or prejudice. The physical connection they'd always shared transformed into something transcendent, not just desire, but recognition, not just pleasure, but belonging. Every touch conveyed understanding that went beyond words. Every kiss, a promise neither had believed possible before finding each other. As morning light filtered through her curtains, Maya watched Ethan sleeping beside her. The normally controlled businessman looked younger in repose, vulnerable in a way that made her heart ache with tenderness. She realized with startling clarity that what had begun as attraction had evolved into something she'd never expected to find, especially not with someone from a world so different from her own. She was in love with him, not despite their differences, but with full acknowledgement of them, not ignoring the challenges they faced, but believing they were worth facing together. When Ethan opened his eyes to find her watching him, his smile was so genuinely happy that it erased all the sophisticated polish he typically presented to the world. "What are you thinking?" he asked, pulling her closer. "That you snore," she teased, deflecting the intensity of her realization. "I do not," he protested, laughing as he pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Billionaires don't snore. It's in the handbook." Their laughter filled the small apartment, a symbol of how far they'd come, from strangers viewing each other through lenses of assumption to lovers who had found common ground without erasing their unique perspectives. The month they designated for mutual understanding was drawing to a close, but both recognized that what they'd begun was not an experiment with an end date, but the foundation of something that could last. They had not solved all the problems their different backgrounds presented, but they had proven to themselves that, with honest communication and genuine effort, those differences could strengthen rather than weaken their bond. "What happens now?" Maya asked on the final evening of their agreed month, as they sat together on the rooftop where they'd first met. The city spread below them, a tapestry of lights and shadows they now both understood in new ways. Ethan took her hand, his expression more serious than she'd seen it in weeks. "Now we build something together, not your world or mine, but something new that honors both." His words, simple yet profound, captured exactly what they'd been working toward, not assimilation, but integration, not compromise, but creation. The path wouldn't be easy, but they had proven to themselves that it was possible. As they kissed against the backdrop of the city they both loved, yet experienced so differently, they silently acknowledged that their greatest strength lay not in their similarities, but in how their differences complemented and completed each other. Like her photographs capturing both shadow and light, their relationship found its beauty in contrasts harmonized rather than erased. The true test of their newly strengthened bond came sooner than either expected. A prestigious gallery had offered Maya a solo exhibition, a career-defining opportunity that would require months of intensive work. The same week, Ethan faced a critical business negotiation that could redefine his company's direction. Instead of these parallel challenges creating distance, they found ways to support each other while respecting their individual journeys. Ethan cleared space in his penthouse for Maya to work when she needed absolute focus. Maya attended key meetings with him, her outsider perspective helping him see opportunities his team missed. "We're creating a new template," Ethan observed one night, as they reviewed her exhibition layout spread across his living room floor. Not just for us, but maybe for others too. Maya looked up from her photographs. What do you mean? Relationships where differences are strength rather than obstacles, where neither person has to diminish themselves to fit the other's world. The observation stayed with Maya as her exhibition opening approached. She had titled the show Intersections, a collection exploring the meeting points of seemingly disparate elements in the urban landscape. As she finalized the sequence of images, she realized she had unconsciously created a visual metaphor for her relationship with Ethan, finding beauty and meaning precisely where different worlds collided. Chapter 8. The first test as their month together ended. Ethan's business partner, Liam, arrived with troubling news. A competitor was attempting a hostile takeover of Ethan's company. I need you back in the real world, Liam said, eyeing Maya with suspicion. Whatever this distraction is, it's costing us. Ethan's jaw tightened. Maya isn't a distraction. Later, Maya found Ethan poring over documents, his face drawn with worry. You should go, he said without looking up. This will get ugly. Instead, Maya sat beside him. Tell me what's happening. To his surprise, her fresh perspective helped him see a solution he'd missed. Working together through the night, they formulated a plan that would save his company. We make a good team, Ethan said. Amazed, Maya kissed him softly. Maybe our differences are our strength. The business crisis became an unexpected testing ground for their relationship. Instead of driving them apart, it revealed how their different perspectives could create solutions neither would have found alone. Ethan's strategic thinking complemented Maya's creative problem-solving. Her ability to see patterns where others saw chaos balanced his expertise in navigating corporate politics. As they worked side by side, Maya glimpsed a side of Ethan she hadn't fully appreciated before. His leadership style that inspired loyalty rather than fear. His principled approach to business that refused to sacrifice ethics for profit. His genuine concern for how his decisions affected employees at all levels. In turn, Ethan witnessed Maya's resilience and adaptability, her willingness to engage with unfamiliar territory without pretending expertise she didn't have, her gift for humanizing complex situations that others approached only through numbers and analysis. I never imagined my girlfriend consulting on corporate strategy, Ethan said one evening, as they reviewed presentation materials for the board meeting that would determine his company's fate. I never imagined my boyfriend asking for my opinion on corporate strategy, Maya countered with a smile. But here we are. The night before the board meeting, tension ran high. Months of work, Ethan's professional reputation, and the livelihoods of hundreds of employees hung in the balance. As Maya massaged the knots from Ethan's shoulders, she felt the weight of responsibility he carried daily. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said softly, we'll face it together. He covered her hand with his own. Having you beside me makes me stronger not just personally, but professionally too. The board meeting itself was a masterclass in strategic partnership. Ethan presented the core business case with his usual precision, while Maya had helped craft visuals that told the human story behind the numbers. When Liam initially objected to her presence, Ethan calmly explained that Maya's contribution to their strategy had been invaluable, not as his girlfriend, but as a professional with unique insights. When the votes were tallied and the takeover attempt definitively defeated, the celebration was as much about their relationship weathering its first major test as about the business victory itself. They had proven to themselves and to skeptics like Liam that their connection wasn't a distraction, but a source of strength and innovation. That evening, as they celebrated privately in Ethan's penthouse, he surprised her with a gift, a vintage camera he tracked down from a collector in Switzerland, one she'd once mentioned as her dream equipment. This isn't because we won today, he clarified, as she examined it with reverent hands. It's because seeing the world through your eyes has changed mine forever. I wanted you to have a new lens to keep showing me what I miss. The thoughtfulness of the gift, not its expense, but how perfectly it reflected understanding of her passion, brought tears to Maya's eyes. You don't need to buy me things, she said softly. I know, Ethan replied, taking her hand. But sometimes a gift isn't about money. It's about saying what words can't quite capture. As they stood on his balcony, watching the city transform in the gathering dusk, Maya reflected on how far they'd come from that first rooftop meeting. The journey hadn't been smooth or predictable, but its very challenges had forged something neither had expected to find. A partnership that honored their differences while creating something entirely new. What are you thinking about? Ethan asked, arms encircling her from behind. "That I love you," she said simply. The words feeling right, despite all the complexity surrounding them. Not despite our differences, but including them. His arms tightened around her, his lips brushing her temple. "I love you too," he whispered against her skin. "All of you, especially the parts that challenge me, that make me see the world differently." The city lights blurred through her tears as she turned in his arms, finding his mouth with hers. Whatever came next, whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together, not as Ethan and Maya from separate worlds, but as partners who had created their own. Chapter 9. The Greater Challenge. Just as Ethan's business crisis resolved, Maya received the opportunity of a lifetime. A year-long international photography assignment documenting indigenous communities threatened by climate change across 4 continents. "This is everything I've worked for," she told Ethan, her eyes shining, yet troubled by the implications for their relationship. They sat in his garden, the same place he'd first brought her for dinner, now a sanctuary they both cherished, a chance to create work that matters, that might actually drive change. "Then you have to take it," he said without hesitation. Though she didn't miss the flicker of pain in his eyes, his immediate support touched her deeply. There was no attempt to dissuade her, no subtle manipulation to prioritize their relationship over her career. "It's a year, Ethan," she said softly. 12 months, in remote locations, sometimes without reliable communication for weeks. He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm in that familiar gesture that always calmed her. "Your work is important, Maya. This is who you are, someone who sees what others miss and makes them pay attention. I would never ask you to be less than that." His generosity of spirit made the next words even harder. "You could come with me," she suggested hopefully, "at least for parts of it. We've never traveled together." The suggestion hung between them, technically possible, yet practically complicated. "I can't just leave everything," he replied after a moment, his tone regretful but firm. "The Brooklyn project is still vulnerable, and we're breaking ground on the community center next month." Their old conflict resurfaced, not from lack of love or understanding, but from the practical reality of lives built in different spheres. Was their connection, however profound, enough to withstand a year of separation? Could what they'd built survive such a profound test? That night, lying awake in his arms, Maya contemplated declining the assignment. The thought made her heart constrict painfully, both with the loss of the opportunity and with the knowledge that sacrificing her career advancement for a relationship was exactly what she'd always vowed never to do. Ethan, sensing her restlessness, pulled her closer. "Tell me what you're thinking," he murmured against her hair. "That, I'm afraid," she admitted. "Internal too." 5 MB. "That I'm afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that a year apart will change things between us. Afraid that if I don't go, I'll eventually resent you for being the reason. Afraid that there's no perfect solution." "I'm afraid too," he confessed, surprising her with his candor. "But I'm more afraid of you looking back in 10 years and wondering what might have been if you'd taken this chance. I couldn't bear being the reason you compromised your vision." His understanding brought tears to her eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "I had an excellent teacher," he replied, kissing her forehead. "Someone who showed me that real love means wanting the other person to become more fully themselves, not a version that's convenient for you." They spent the following weeks making tentative plans, regions where he might join her briefly, technologies to stay connected, strategies for maintaining their bond across continents and time zones. Yet beneath the practical preparations lay an unspoken anxiety. Long-distance relationships challenged even the most established couples. Theirs was still relatively new, still finding its footing. The night before her departure arrived too quickly. They'd planned a quiet dinner at his penthouse, but when evening came and Ethan hadn't appeared or answered messages, Maya felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. Had he changed his mind about supporting her decision? Was this his way of beginning the separation on his terms? Heartbroken, she returned to her apartment to finish packing, accepting that perhaps some gaps couldn't be bridged by love alone, no matter how genuine. Their worlds, momentarily aligned, had perhaps finally proven too distinct to fully integrate. She packed mechanically, each item placed in her suitcase feeling like another piece of her heart being stored away. When her phone remained silent through the night, she allowed herself to cry, grieving not just for the relationship, but for the belief that differences could be overcome through understanding and effort. As she reached the airport the next morning, exhausted from a sleepless night, she searched the departures hall crowd, hoping against hope. But Ethan wasn't there. The final confirmation of what she'd feared hit her with physical force. He had let her go already. Fighting tears, she checked her luggage and proceeded through security, each step feeling heavier than the last. As she waited at the gate, she scrolled through photos of them together on her phone, torturing herself with images of happiness that now seemed like a beautiful but temporary dream. Final boarding call for passenger Thompson. The announcement jolted her from her reverie. Gathering her carry-on and camera bag, she joined the short line of remaining passengers, each step toward the jetway feeling like moving through water. Just as she handed her boarding pass to the gate agent, a commotion erupted behind her. Turning, she saw Ethan rushing toward her, disheveled and out of breath, looking nothing like the impeccably controlled businessman the world knew. "Wait," he called, dodging frustrated travelers. "Maya, wait." She stepped aside, heart pounding as he reached her. "You didn't come last night," she said, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. "I'm sorry," he gasped, looking genuinely distraught. "My phone died in the middle of nowhere, and then the car broke down. I've been trying to get back to the city since yesterday afternoon." Confusion replaced hurt. "Back from where?" "From this," he said, reaching into his pocket to produce a small, worn leather case. Opening it revealed not a ring, as she'd momentarily feared, but an antique compass, its face yellowed with age. "It was my grandfather's," Ethan explained, still catching his breath. "He gave it to my father, who gave it to me when I was 10. He said it would always help me find my way home, no matter how lost I might feel." He pressed it into her palm, closing her fingers around it. "I wanted you to have it not because you need direction. You've always known your path better than I've known mine. But as a promise that no matter how far apart we are, we'll find our way back to each other." The simple gesture, so much more meaningful than any grand declaration or expensive gift, brought tears to her eyes. This wasn't a man trying to bind her to him or make her smaller to fit his world. This was a partner supporting her journey while offering a tether to what they'd built together. "Ma'am, we need to close the door," the gate agent interrupted gently. "Go," Ethan said, brushing a tear from her cheek. "Capture those stories that only you can tell. I'll be here when you return." "What about your projects, the developments?" she asked, still processing his unexpected appearance. "They'll be there too," he replied with a smile. "But I've been thinking maybe it's time I expanded my vision as well. The Carter Foundation has contacts in most of the regions you'll be visiting. Perhaps there are partnerships to be built, sustainable development projects that could support the communities you'll be documenting." Understanding dawned. "You're not just letting me go. You're finding a way for our paths to run parallel even when we're apart." "Exactly," he nodded. "Different journeys, separate but connected, like those constellations you showed me, independent stars, that, together, form something meaningful." With one last lingering kiss that carried all the words they didn't have time to say, Maya whispered, "I love you," against his lips. "I love you too," he replied, the simple words containing multitudes. "Now go change the world. I'll be watching." As her plane lifted into the clouds, Maya held the compass in her palm, its weight reassuring against her skin. They had found a way forward that honored both their individual paths and their shared journey, not a compromise that diminished either, but a solution that expanded both. Chapter 10. Two Worlds, One Heart. 1 year later, Maya stood in the busy arrivals terminal, heart hammering against her ribs. Her body felt strange in Western clothes after months in indigenous communities, her ears overwhelmed by the cacophony of announcements and reunions happening around her. Though she'd returned briefly 3 times during her assignment, this homecoming felt different, permanent, significant, the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. Would he be there? They'd spoken just yesterday, his voice clear, despite the distance between New Delhi and New York. But international flights could be delayed. Meetings could run long. Life could intervene in countless ways. Then the crowd parted, and there he was, Ethan, looking much the same, yet somehow different. His hair was slightly longer, his skin more tan than she remembered. He wore casual clothes rather than his usual business attire, and something in his posture seemed more relaxed, less burdened by the weight of empire. For a moment, they simply stared at each other across the terminal, absorbing the reality of reunion after the longest separation of their relationship. Then, heedless of onlookers, they were moving toward each other. His arms encircled her with familiar strength, lifting her slightly as he buried his face in her neck, inhaling as though trying to convince himself she was real. "You're here," he whispered against her skin, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm home," she corrected, pulling back just enough to see his face, the face she'd missed with an ache that sometimes woke her in the night, no matter how fulfilling her work had been. Their kiss was both reunion and rediscovery, familiar yet new, a homecoming more profound than any physical location could provide. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, his eyes searched hers with a question he seemed almost afraid to ask. "Was it everything you hoped?" The question encompassed so much: her professional journey, their decision to pursue separate paths while maintaining their connection, the year of growth apart that had tested and ultimately strengthened their bond. "More," she replied honestly. "The work was more challenging, more heartbreaking, and more rewarding than I could have imagined. And this us was stronger than I dared hope." Relief softened his features. "I was so afraid," he admitted, as they walked hand in hand toward the exit, her luggage trailing behind them. "Not that you wouldn't come back, but that what you found out there would make what we have seem small in comparison." "The opposite happened," she assured him, squeezing his hand. "Seeing communities survive against impossible odds, preserving their identity while adapting to change it, made me more certain that what we're building is worth every challenge." In the car, as the familiar Manhattan skyline emerged through the windows, Maya studied Ethan's profile. "And you? How was your year?" A smile played at his lips. "Transformative. The Foundation's work in those same communities gave me purpose beyond profit. Seeing the impact of sustainable development, working with local leaders instead of imposing outside solutions, it changed my approach to everything." They had each grown during their time apart, not away from each other, but into stronger versions of themselves. Their separate journeys had somehow brought them to a more aligned place than forced togetherness might have achieved. Instead of returning to either of their homes, Ethan drove them to the garden house, the place where they'd shared their first real date, now lush with early summer blooms. As they walked the familiar paths in the fading evening light, Maya felt the weight of the past year's separations and reunions, challenges and triumphs, culminating in this moment of perfect peace. "I've been thinking," Ethan said as they reached the center of the garden, where a simple picnic awaited them, reminiscent of their first meal together in this place. "About homes and belonging. What conclusions did you reach?" she asked, sensing something important in his thoughtful tone. "That home isn't a place," he replied, taking both her hands in his. "It's wherever we're together, whether that's here in New York or in a remote village documenting environmental impacts, or anywhere else your work and my projects might take us." The sentiment echoed her own realizations during months spent documenting communities whose physical homes were threatened, but whose sense of belonging to each other remained unshakable. "I don't want to ask you to choose between your work and our life together," Ethan continued, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "I want to build a life that encompasses both, that expands rather than limits what each of us can become." Kneeling before her, he offered not a diamond ring, but a simple wooden box. Inside lay two objects: his mother's worn camera, which he'd mentioned but never shown her, and a small key. "Will you build a life with me, Maya? Not my life or yours, but something new that we create together, something that honors where we've come from, but isn't limited by it." Tears filled her eyes as she nodded, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes to all of it." Later, as they lay together beneath the stars in the garden where their journey had truly begun, Ethan explained the key to a brownstone he'd purchased in a neighborhood between their two worlds, with the photography studio for her work and office space for his foundation. "We can keep the penthouse for business entertaining and your apartment for when you need your own space," he added, showing he understood her need for independence, even within their partnership. "But I wanted us to have a place that belongs to neither of our old lives, just to the one we're building together." They didn't have a fairy tale wedding that week, or even that year. Instead, they built something rarer, a love founded on seeing each other's truths. Ethan learned that real wealth wasn't in his bank accounts, but in Maya's smile when he truly understood her. Maya discovered that pride could be as much a barrier as prejudice. Together, they created a photography foundation that gave voices to overlooked communities around the world. Ethan's business focus shifted increasingly toward sustainable development that supported, rather than exploited the communities Maya documented. Their worlds, once seemingly incompatible, now complemented each other in ways neither could have predicted that first morning on a Manhattan rooftop. Years later, as they stood in the same garden where he had proposed, their fingers intertwined, they watched the sunset paint the sky in colors that no camera could fully capture. Their photography foundation now gave voices to overlooked communities around the world. When two different worlds collided with passion and understanding, they didn't just coexist, they transformed each other. "Would you do it all again?" Ethan asked, brushing his lips against her temple. "Every argument, every misunderstanding, every moment," Maya whispered back, turning to meet his gaze. As their lips met in a kiss that still held the same fire as their first, they knew the truth. It wasn't as a billionaire and a photographer that they stood there, but simply as Ethan and Maya, two people who had found in each other's arms the most precious thing of all, a love that defied all expectations